Welcome to By Seat and By Saddle, Seeing North America by Car and by Motorcycle. After our retirement in 2011, my wife Sue and I made a number of road trips taking pictures of what we saw and recording what we did. Thinking our experiences might be useful to others planning similar road trips, we decided to preserve and share our travel diaries. This is the story of one of our trips, a trip from December 31st, 2014 to February 9th, 2015. This story is a bit different from most of the others on this channel. On this trip, we left the motorcycle at home and just took along 2 bicycles. The bicycles also have saddles, so our channel title applies, sort of. On this trip, we drive to Florida and back and describe interesting sights and adventures we have along the way. So come on and travel with us. We will take you along with words and photographs. It's a pleasure to share them with you. We have made a list of all the things that we saw and did during this trip. This list is intended to help you choose the things that interest you or help you go back to something you might want to see again. Note that you can stop the video at any time for a closer look at any picture. We spent the first night at the Cumberland Inn in Williamsburg, Kentucky, which at that time was owned and operated by the University of the Cumberlands. We had stayed there during trip number 5 as well, and so I've taken these 2 pictures from trip number 5, part 1. At that time, the inn included a wing called Henkelman's Life Science Collection, with amazing displays of stuffed wild animals effectively mounted in action poses. These are 5 examples. Unfortunately, this wing does not appear to be open anymore. On the following night, Saturday night, we were not far from Plains, Georgia, the hometown of former President Jimmy Carter and his wife Rosalynn. We had accidentally learned that Mr. Carter taught a Sunday school class in a little Baptist church there and that the public was welcome to attend. So we drove down, and sure enough, a Sunday school class and church service were scheduled in the Maranatha Baptist Church with the following order of service. Sue said it was the first time she'd ever been searched and scanned by the Secret Service, just to go to church. Our car was also thoroughly checked by another agent with an explosive sniffer dog. The attendees at the service came from every state in the Union, from Canada and even South Korea. At that time, Jimmy Carter was 90 years old, and he had just sent his 29th book to a publisher. Photos were permitted, and we were fortunate to get these pictures of the church interior, several of them with the former president teaching. After the service, the church attendees could have their picture taken with Jimmy and Rosalynn outside the church. The following is our picture with them. We spent the next 3 nights in Hernando County, Florida, which is on the Gulf of Mexico. On the first morning, we started looking for a place to ride our bicycles. First, we searched the Willacoochee Gulf Preserve, which is a large area of salt flats and pools. Looking across the Crystal River, we were just able to make out the gigantic cooling towers of the Crystal River Energy Complex. This facility has 4 fossil fuel power plants and 1 nuclear plant. The nuclear plant has an 860 megawatt pressurized water reactor that has been shut down since 2009. An attempt at refurbishment apparently caused irreparable damage and required reactor decommissioning. The damage is said to have occurred when only 27 of 426 wall tendons were loosened instead of the required 74. We finally found a great biking trail called the Dunallen Bike Trail near Citrus Springs. The trail was very scenic and we enjoyed it a lot. On another day, we rode our bikes 10 miles in the J.B. Starkey Wilderness Park. Later in the day, we loaded our bikes and drove south, stopping briefly at the James E. Gray Preserve, where we saw several armadillos. They looked like they belonged to the age of dinosaurs and seemed totally unafraid of us. They are unique creatures. They can walk across a stream underwater by holding their breath for up to 6 minutes. They can also jump 3 or 4 feet straight upwards, an unfortunate practice that makes them frequent roadkill. Also unique is that the females always give birth to 4 identical quadruplets that develop from a single egg. This characteristic makes their species quite prolific. Our drive south took us down as far as Tarpon Springs, originally settled by Greek sponge fishermen and still completely Greek in flavor and culture. We stopped there a short time and looked into the old St. Nicholas Greek Orthodox Church to see how Greek culture might be reflected in Greek religious orthodoxy. We then turned around and drove north and east to Gainesville, which is where the University of Florida is located. We stayed in the Lodge, a very nice hotel that provided a free hot breakfast in the morning and free cocktails and popcorn every evening between 5:30 and 7:30. Really unbeatable. The Florida Museum of Natural History is part of the University of Florida and had a large number of really interesting exhibits. Fossils of shark jaws showed that prehistoric sharks might have been able to have Moby Dick for breakfast. The Ichthyological, or fish specimen collection, is ranked near the top of all in North America. This photograph was likely taken in a so-called underwater walkthrough, which boasts 12 times life-size sculptures. This skeleton is thought to be that of a Columbian mammoth, apparently found in the Osceola River in north-central Florida. This skeleton is thought to be that of an American mastodon, also on display at the museum. The Calusa were a fierce and powerful Native American tribe that inhabited southwest Florida for several hundred years after 1000 CE. These are dramatic scenes featuring human sculptures in a Calusa chief's house around 1564, and another scene showing Calusa life and hierarchy. The University of Florida also operates the Santa Fe College Teaching Zoo. Some examples of the zoo animals to be seen are the red-ruffed lemur and Matschie's tree kangaroo. I took a short video of a white-handed gibbon, swinging on a rope and singing happily. Gibbon's vocalization is complex and exhibits recognizable syntax and meaning. It has been extensively studied. Interestingly, female gibbons have lower voices than males, which is the opposite of humans.
The video?
At the time we were there, the teaching zoo also had some giant tortoises. Took a short video of one tortoise on its way somewhere. Its speed was a little like teenagers asked to rake the lawn or take out the garbage. We also got to talk to several students working on their research projects. Back to bicycling, the Gainesville-Hawthorne Rail Trail is a 16-mile trail that was once a railway track. It was paved and comfortable riding with a lot of great scenery along the way. The trail took us through some magical swamp areas with the most striking reflections, particularly those of the swamp cypress trees on the water surfaces. Now, the city of St. Augustine is only about 75 miles east of Gainesville. Although we had visited it before on Trip 5 Part 4, we couldn't pass up the chance to ride through it again, this time on bicycles instead of the motorcycle. We immediately noticed an amazing tall ship in the St. Augustine harbor. It was the El Galeon Andalucia, a 170-foot, 495-ton authentic wooden replica of a Spanish galleon, just visiting from Spain. It was owned and operated by the Nio Victoria Foundation of Seville, Spain, and manned by 28 Spanish crew members. The ship is similar to the flagship of Don Pedro Menendez de Aviles, the founder of St. Augustine, which was one of the most important and powerful ships of its day. In 1565, it carried 800 Spanish colonists and supplies to found St. Augustine, which became the first permanent European settlement in the United States. To secure their claim to North America, the Spanish built a fort, the Castillo de San Marcos. Built in 1672, it is the oldest masonry fortification in the continental United States and was important for protecting Spanish ships on the way back to Spain. Cannons were vital to defense of the fortress. The Castillo walls were built with shellstone or coquina stone. This is a rare type of limestone formed by seashells and fragments of other marine invertebrates glued together by the calcium carbonate in the shells. It was mined on nearby Anastasia Island. It absorbs the shock of cannon and rifle fire and is said to swallow cannonballs without serious damage. In 1702, the English tried and failed to capture the fort despite 2 months of continuous bombardment. This is another amazing example of the coquina stone application, and the severely corroded cannon is great verification of its antiquity. St. Augustine also has a couple of additional places worth checking out. One is the Fountain of Youth Archaeological Park. Almost every school kid learns about the Spanish explorer Ponce de Leon, who in 1513 was the first European to reach Florida and to name it. A legend developed that his explorations were somehow connected to the search for a fabled spring or fountain that could make you young again. That is highly unlikely. In any case, our visit didn't seem to do us any good. Another nearby site is the Fort Mose Historic State Park. In 1738, the Spanish governor of Florida granted land for a settlement called Gracia Real de Santa Teresa de Mose. There, any slaves able to escape the English colonies and reach St. Augustine were liberated and allowed to build their own fort. To qualify for freedom, they had to declare allegiance to the King of Spain and join the Catholic Church. When Florida became an English colony in 1763, the freed slaves relocated to Cuba. A glance at a map shows that St. Augustine was also vulnerable to warships via the Matanzas River, so in 1742 the Spanish built another coquina stone fort on Rattlesnake Island near the mouth of the river, 15 miles from St. Augustine. Now maintained as the Fort Matanzas National Monument, visitors to the historic fort can take a 5-minute boat ride from the visitor center on Anastasia Island. The photo shows both the fort and the access boat. Access and parking for the Matanzas River was available near its mouth at the Atlantic Ocean. It had a nice river beach and was a great place to relax, with dolphins playing offshore, kayakers paddling upstream, and kids playing on the beach. In addition, just a narrow spit of land separated the river beach from the Atlantic Ocean beaches. One last interesting experience. I suddenly noticed a black snake slithering through the underbrush and grabbed the camera. The snake refused to stop for the photo, so unfortunately only a short part of it is visible. We had no luck trying to find the snake again, but we did notice a tortoise entering a nearby hole and took another picture. We later happened across a sign further down the beach with information on something called a gopher tortoise. This tortoise creates burrows in the sand for shelter. Amazingly, its burrows are then also used by other animals, including rabbits, opossums, armadillos, and particularly the eastern indigo snake. Eastern indigo snakes are glossy black with purple or blue highlights. We were exceptionally lucky to get a glimpse of both the landlord and the tenant. To top off our trip, we played a round of mini-golf, which ended happily with a tied score. The next day we headed north, and after 2 days of easy and uneventful driving, we're back in our familiar world of snow and frigid temperatures. This concludes trip number 12. On this trip, we drove to Florida, and on the way attended a Sunday school class taught by former President Jimmy Carter. We also posed for a photograph with the former president and with Rosalynn, his wife, the former First Lady. Later, we rode our bicycles on a number of scenic Florida bicycle trails. A stop in Tarpon Springs showed us how Greek culture was reflected in a beautiful Greek Orthodox church. The Museum of Natural History in Gainesville included fossil skeletons of local prehistoric fauna and striking depictions of indigenous life and culture in pre-European Florida. The Santa Fe College Teaching Zoo was a facility providing research and instruction on the health and safety of zoo animals, an aspect not always apparent in traditional zoos. Finally, St. Augustine was a window to a brutal past in which fortresses and forts were essential for protection from one's enemies. However, it was also a place of refuge from slavery and where a few optimists even dared to dream of perpetual youth.